It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of self-reliance. An Economy of One with Gary Rathbun.
This is our country.
Good evening and welcome again to An Economy of One. I am your host, Gary Rathbun. We're going to skip the usual introductory amenities and go right to our guest, Veronique de Rugy. She's a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. She's an economic blogger at National Review Online's The Corner and a featured columnist at creators.com. We've talked to her many times about the Export-Import Bank as well as other subjects. She's one of my favorites. Veronique, welcome back to An Economy of One.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
I appreciate your time. You know, we spent a lot of time over the last year talking to you about the Export-Import Bank, and for a little while the charter was expired, and then it got renewed in the dark of night on the transportation bill.
But I have good news on that front.
I was hoping.
So you're right that it was renewed, but and it really, I mean, it was a major betrayal from even like Republicans like Paul Ryan, who is the new chairman. And I won't get into the details of why that is, but there were a lot of Republicans who wanted it, and he could have stopped it, and he didn't.
Right.
And the good news is that in order to allow loans that are above $10 million, you have to have at least 3 board of directors on the board. Mm-hmm. And board members, basically. That's the quorum that you need to approve above $10 million loans, and they only have 2. And President Obama has nominated a Democrat and a Republican, and Senator Shelby on the Banking Committee on the Senate side has said that actually right now he's in no hurry to hold hearings for any of Obama nominations. So for now, right, the bank is actually not even a lag. It's like half a lag, because 84% I had calculated of the deal they make involve above $10 million loans.
Wow! So
it's pretty good.
so it's essentially pretty much neutral right now, then.
So what it means is that they can only approve loans for small businesses, really, small deal loans. So and of course now Boeing and GE are like resuming massive fundraising because they want that approved, because, the bank as it is of no use to them. Right.
Right. Well, and all kinds of bad things were going to happen according to GE and Boeing if it didn't get renewed. The tens of thousands of people would be out of work. And the fact is, GE moved some of their stuff to Canada anyway. And if I remember right, Boeing has been getting just tons of orders from all over the world anyway also.
These guys are doing fine. The thing that's really interesting about them is the fact that the moment, and you're right, the moment the bank was reauthorized, right, the scare tactics ended. Mm-hmm. And I think that and it's interesting because fundamentally they're not getting what they want, but I think they thought that the next step was just a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. It was going to be easy, and it's really not. So Senator Shelby holds tight. It could be a whole year without these guys getting. I'm not worried for that, because the backlog is so gigantic, right? And all the previous loans that were approved before June 30th are still going to be honored. Mm-hmm. But they're doing fine. They're doing fine. But it's not that bad. It's actually kind of like one of our little victory that no one knows about.
Well, I'll take all the victories we can get on that front.
I agree.
I read something a while back, it might have been a week or so ago, you talking about the lobbyists in Washington. And of course, GE and Boeing were mentioned in your article. They've increased their lobbying budgets tremendously in recent months. Is that due to export-import, or is it just general lobbying for other pieces of goodies?
Lobbying is, it's always really, really, really strong. Mm-hmm. But the massive increase in lobbying for those companies in particular would definitely due to XM. Open Secret, if your listener are interested, Open Secret is it's a database that actually keeps track of all the lobbying that takes place. And if you're a lobbyist, you have to register, right? And about a certain amount, you have to actually state the purpose of your lobbying. So they're actually they're a really good source. So it's called Open Secret, and so they wrote specifically an article talking about how the National Association of Manufacturers and Boeing and GE and also the Chamber of Commerce had stepped up the lobbying specifically to get XM reauthorized, and that they were putting the machine back in place in order to get these quorum, to reach this 3-director quorum that would allow them to get really finally what they want. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. I mean, literally, the National Association of Manufacturers, they increased their they're always big lobbyists, but they're increased by from $12.4 million to nearly $17 million. So basically, they spent a whole $5 million more, and specifically GE went from $15.17 million to nearly $21 million. We're talking a ton of money.
Now, you're in that world. You write about it, you study it, you see all this stuff, kind of how the sausage is made in Washington. I read something a while back. I don't think it was one of your columns, but I read something that I hadn't really thought about before, but a lot of these politicians, a lot of members of Congress, will have an issue come up to vote on, and they'll actually go out and solicit lobbyists, or this source talked about that they would go to lobbyists and say, hey, how much to get me to vote one way or the other? We think of lobbyists going after them, but politicians are going after the lobbyists.
Politicians too.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's a really blurred line that they have to do it in a particular way. So I don't think they're allowed to go and really specifically say, hey, how much would you bribe me?
Right.
But it absolutely happens in both directions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, those guys are constantly looking for donation. Look at President Obama, right? You would think that he would actually kind of be off the fundraising bandwagon. Not at all. And that's because now he's trying to collect campaign contribution for the Senate and for the House, and it just never ends.
Right. It's absolutely discouraging. We're speaking with Veronique.
No, it's not. Let me again point to you to one data point. It's not much, but you and I, we know that we have to hang on to whatever good news there is.
Oh, no question.
Senator Cruz winning the Republican caucus in Iowa, even though he continued and stuck to his position that he was against the ethanol mandate because it's a big crony program, is unheard of. I mean, it was the common perception was that there's no way you would stand a chance in Iowa by not supporting farm subsidies and ethanol mandates.
Yeah, it was encouraging to see that, especially with the momentum Trump has had and that kind of stuff. But we're speaking with Veronique de Rugy, a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. I wanted to switch gears a little bit here. Once again, I read you all the time. Everything you write, I read. And I really...
I'm so sorry.
It's very enjoyable. But, President Obama came out with a budget yesterday that was interesting reading. I didn't read the whole budget. I read synopsis of kind of executive summaries of different points. The guy isn't acting very much like a lame duck his last year. He's going for a lot in this budget, isn't he?
Well, yes and no. So, yes. I mean, he's going for a lot of taxes. He's going for stuff like wage insurance. which is exactly what it sounds like, which is like if you're a worker making under $50,000 and you lose your job and then you have to take a job that's like less than what you have for a year or two and up to $10,000, taxpayers will subsidize half of the of the difference in wage loss. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's where we are. And there's a ton of, there's like a $3 trillion tax hike, and 2.6 trillion of that comes from business taxes, and it's crazy. And the assumptions that are made, and he makes absolutely no attempt whatsoever to address the debt problem. In fact, he explodes the debt quite significantly. He raises spending dramatically, and it's really astonishing, actually. But it's the same stuff he has been trying to actually push, and just the same democratic goals, which just never see the light of day.
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorite quotes from college economics professor is, "There's no end to the good do-gooders will do with other people's money."
Exactly.
And I got to take a quick break. Can you hang on through the break? I got a couple more questions for you. I'm Gary Rathbun, speaking of Veronique de Rugy from the Mercatus Center. This is an Economy of One.
This is an Economy of One with Gary Rathbun.
We're speaking with Veronique de Rugy. She's a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University and a blogger at National Review Online's The Corner and a featured columnist at creators.com. Veronique, one of the things that is getting a lot of lip service, I guess you'd say, or a lot of conversation around is in President Obama's budget he presented yesterday. He put in there a $10 a barrel, $10 tax on each barrel of oil.
That's what I wrote my creators column this week.
Yeah, let's tell me a little bit about that. I really don't think it has much chance of getting through Congress first time through, does it?
No, it has no chance of getting through Congress ever, I think.
Okay.
But the thing that's really interesting is, like, of course he's playing the look at those bad oil company, and we're going to tax them in order to fund green energy, green energy. So it's like it's a bad oil company. But the truth of the matter is, like, I cannot imagine that his tax economists haven't told him that one of the law of economics is the person who actually writes the check for taxes is not necessarily the one shouldering the burden of the tax. And in this particular case, American consumers are going to be, oil companies are going to pass through that tax to consumers, and prices are going to go up. So sure, it's going to be great for you if when you're filling up, you're like, man, those prices are way too low. I wish I paid more. But if you're not in that category, which I doubt most people are, it sucks for you because you're going to be the one, shouldering it.
The tax is going to, the oil companies are not going to be taxed. They're just a tax collector, really. And that's going to hit everybody in every economic class, which is something they try to put on us. One thing I wanted to ask, now you're an expert. I respect your opinion and your research and in all of this. And this is kind of a non sequitur question, but why are all of these numbers always illustrated in a 10-year period? So we're going to collect taxes, and it'll be $1 trillion over the next 10 years, and we're going to spend, $1.3 trillion on this program over 10 years.
It wasn't always the case, and but that's like the way they do it now. And I think the purpose, the original intent, I think, was actually a good one, which is like if you only have a budget and you only have 1 or 2 years, you're not allowing for the projection of spending on outward years, right? But in a lot of the time, actually, even the 10-year window is not enough. So, for instance, Obamacare, it's going to hit a lot of, and also, of course, having a window, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, it opens to gains.
Right.
Because what they do is like they put all the benefits up front and then all the costs afterward. So it wasn't always the case, and it was. I mean, it's not a bad idea to have kind of more than a 1 year or 2 years because it allows you to see, but it allows also for a lot of budget gimmicks.
Well, I mean, there's no way in the world that anybody is going to commit a Congress to take any type of action 10 years from now. I mean,
no, and you can't tie the hands of future Congresses.
Right.
So,
right.
Which is actually always what annoys me about the Ryan plans about reforming Medicare. Right? It's because it always starts in a 10 years window, outside of the 10 years window.
Right.
And even if it were in 5 years, it would be no better. But 10 years make it even actually it makes it worse. The further out, right? The less you can constrain, have any. So it's kind of like, if it is a good idea, shouldn't we start doing it now? You know, maybe not this year, but like next year for sure. And the reason why, do you remember the sequester?
Sure.
So in November 2011, the super committee failed to actually find a package that would actually reduce debt by $1.2 trillion. And that was going to be a mix of taxes and spending.
Right.
And so automatically that super committee failed. We went to a system that I liked, which was actually straight spending cuts, kind of spending cuts out of the growth to 1.5 trillion just in spending cut to the growth of spending. So that was better than a mix of, but they kept as soon as this that it was obvious that this is what was going to happen, they started finding ways to we can't have this, right? The world is going to fall. If we were to cut, a little bit of defense, there were going to be millions of jobs lost. Throughout the economy, we were told 1 million jobs would be lost and the economy would be hit really hard. And then, so as part of the fiscal cliff, they managed to postpone this to 2013, and then they couldn't escape it, and it was implemented, and then they just removed it in the last budget, at least until 2017. So the idea that they're going to stick to something, that there's not going to be a lot of pressure in 10 years for Congress people who haven't even committed to this.
Right.
It's just.
Well, and the electorate has a really short memory. We're not going to remember what was promised 10 years ago.
No.
And, they can easily say, hey, that wasn't me. I didn't vote for that. So it just always bothers me that they base all these numbers on 10-year projection, and none of them, they're obsolete by the time the ink dries.
I mean, projections always must be taken with a grain of salt, even like this year's projections. I mean, that's but the further away, the most ridiculous it is. Like in this budget, for instance, the president has the economy growing, but on average by 4%.
Right.
Over 4%.
Right.
I mean, and in real terms, that's like 2.3 or 4%.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy considering that usually the economy goes into recession within 10 years, right? And we've been out of a recession for quite a while. And then just really? I mean, and basically the economy starts growing after. I mean, it's like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's theater, and that's the sad thing. It just bothers me because they're just not dealing with things objectively and realistically. We've been speaking.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, if I can add one more thing, is
Sure.
if you want to be upset, I gave you a lot of reason to be optimistic in the first segment, so this segment I'm going to be a little more pessimistic. And the Republicans who are all saying that this budget is dead on arrival are the same guys, for the most part, who actually agreed to the budget deal that would, blow up the caps and then the omnibus that would actually implement so many crony tax extension and spending increase that since August, the CBO had to revise its cumulative estimate of the deficit by $1.5 trillion.
Wow.
So
absolutely incredible. Incredible. Yeah. I'm going out to CPAC in a few weeks. You going to be at CPAC this year?
I don't think so. Republicans just kind of depress me.
Well, I'll try not to take that personally. So.
No, I know, but you're not. You're different. I don't know. It's very political, and I'm just really the politics. I think it's the politics rather than the people. It's not Republican people, but it's just like the politics just really drives me nuts, and so. when I met you last year, it was the first time and only time I had ever been.
Oh.
And it was worth it just for meeting you. But
well, thank you very much. You're most kind. So we've been speaking with Veronique de Rugy from the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. Veronique, once again, thank you so much for all of your time. Appreciate all the work you do. Like I said, I read everything you write, and I hope we get a chance to tap you on the shoulder and chat with you again soon.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Bye.
I'm Gary Rathbun.